Hello, this is Daniel Rashmir from the Occupational Health and Safety course, HSAF 1002, that we provided to the George Brown College in the Continuous Education Department. You have my email address, and this is the chapter number 1, Introduction to Health and Safety. The objectives of this course, of this chapter, are: define occupational health and safety, occupational injury, occupational illness, list and describe the role of the major stakeholders in the occupational health and safety, describe the financial and legal and social implications associated with occupational injuries and illnesses, review the main concepts under the Internal Responsibility System, IRS, and describe most common hazards in the workplace. We are going to see some definitions in regards to health and safety. What is occupational health and safety? There is a definition that I found in some books, and it's the identification, evaluation, and control of hazards associated with the work environment. Basically, we try to see only the hazards that are associated and are produced in the work environment, not at home, not in the road. If you're a truck driver, is your work environment, but mostly reflected in the workplace, that is a facility, an office, a restaurant, constructions, etc., etc. Occupational injury, it's any cut, fracture, sprain, or amputation resulting from workplace accidents. And occupational illness, it's any abnormal condition or disorder caused by exposure to environmental factors associated with employment. Usually environmental factors, it's something that health and safety professionals don't use a lot, but we are going to see what does mean, because some books, they talk about environmental factors we call health hazards, or physical agents, or chemical agents, biological agents, etc. We will see in later slides what does mean. Hazards definitions. A hazard is any activity, situation, or substance that can hurt someone. And there are, in general, well, we are going to see more, but in general there are two types of hazards. The first one is the safety hazards that cause or can cause injuries, and the second one is the health hazards that can cause occupational illness or illnesses. There is another category that we define. Usually they are under health hazards, but it's easier to take it apart and study these type of hazards by itself, because the way that it's assessed is a little bit different than the other previous two. The third category that we have here is the ergonomic hazards, or sometimes they are called, or most commonly called, ergonomics risk factors, that are associated with something that we call musculoskeletal disorders. There is another definition, another category that people want to include in the safety hazards, but we prefer to leave it apart as a standalone category, that are the fire and explosion hazards that could be related to flammable materials or explosives. The safety hazards are related to, for example, slip, trip, and falls, use of manual or power hand tools, some issues related to mobile equipment, or machine safeguarding. That machine safeguarding, it's not a hazard, but machine in motion, it's more related, and how to prevent injuries in regards to machine in motion is to put a safeguard around the machine. For the health hazards, we have three different subcategories. The physical agents that usually are energy sources. For example, electrical current, noise, vibration, heat, UV radiation. The second category, it's more related to chemical agents that we can find many of these at home. And the last category are biological agents that in regards to biological agents is more related to, bacteria, viruses, dust, molds, etc. If we think about all the hazard summaries that we are going to see in this course, we have in the first column hazard, then we have the four categories, the safety hazard, the health hazards, ergonomic risk factor, and fire and explosions. And then we have all the examples for safety hazards, slip, trip and falls, tools, vehicles in motion, machinery in motions. The health hazard, there are three subcategories in light blue: chemical agents, biological agents, and physical agents, and all the examples on the right side in light blue. And then we have ergonomic risk factors, force that are related to force, posture, frequency of repetition, duration, contact stress, and vibration. And the last one is fire and explosion. Basically, we are going to see all these hazards in this course in regards to the in the rest of the 13 chapters, and we are going to see one by one and how could be the best way to prevent them from people from having some injuries or illnesses, and what are the related regulation or regulatory requirement in regards to these hazards. We are going to see a risk management model that we can use many. There are many in the market, but this is a simplified model that it will help you to prepare for the exam and also to clarify what does mean about risk management. When we think about how to do a risk management or how to implement a risk management process, the first step is to do a hazard identification. And this is what we saw the previous slides with all the four categories of hazards. Remember, there are many other categories of hazard. There is nuclear, atomic, but you may not encounter these type of hazards in the workplace. They are very specialized, so working in with below pressure atmosphere, or under pressure atmosphere, these type of things you may not encounter in normal workplaces. This course is more related to, in general, to have an overview of the hazards that we encounter in the workplace, office, industry, some activities in construction, for example. The first step we said is the hazard identification, and once we know what type of hazard people are dealing with, then the next step is to say, okay, what is the risk assessment? How can we categorize this type of hazard? How big is too big, or how much is too much? Is this hazard going to cause, it's going to kill somebody? It's going to cause only a dermatitis, or it's going to cause cancer? In that case, we need to know which hazards are going to cause, based on the scenario, based on what the person is dealing with, or how the person is dealing with, how big is going to be the risk in regards to these hazards. And then the last step is to do a step number 3. That is step number 3 is the control. If the hazard or the risk is too big in order to deal without the controls in place, then we need to provide some controls in order to reduce the risk level. Now we introduce another category. We need to reduce the risk level. Once we implement the controls, let's say we put a fan or ventilation system, or we provide PPEs. What is PPEs? Personal protective equipment. This is very common in the health and safety universe, that we call PPE, like gloves or mask or respiratory protection, everything that can protect the person. Then the last step is to monitor and review that the controls that we have implemented are in place and they work perfectly. Because sometimes we say, okay, in theory, maybe the ventilation system doesn't work, or does work in some occasions, but in another occasions it doesn't work. For example, with high temperature, we put a ventilation, but maybe it's not enough. Maybe we need to put an air conditioning system. Okay? Once we review and monitor and review, the last step is to say, is the risk eliminated or reduced? Are there new hazards introduced in the workplace? Why we said that it could be some new hazard introduced in the workplace? We're supposed to be okay. Sometimes what happens is that, let's say that we use an ergonomics as an example. We want to lift, 20 boxes in a minute, and we need to move from point A to point B. In that case, one person is not enough, and we need to put two persons, or we need to put three, or four, or five. Or let's say we put a forklift, and maybe the forklift is, it's enough, but the problem is that it's going to introduce new hazards in the workplace. In that case, it's the item number 2 that it says, are new hazards introduced in the workplace? And then is the process working effectively? Every control that we introduce is okay and is working effectively. And then it's a closed loop. If one of these questions is no as an answer, then we need to view and try to see and try to reassess the risk. In this slide we say, well, why the importance of health and safety? And when we see this chart with one line, and we saw all the fatalities in Canada from 1993 to 2014. The source is from the Association of Worker Compensations Board in Canada. And we see that all these lines are around 1,000, even though it's a small decreasing at the end, still high. It's still high because we're supposed to see a big decrease. Okay, somebody can say, okay, there's more population, or there is new immigrant, and in the course, when we asked the students, what do you think? And people started to say, oh, immigration, bad training, everything like that. It's a combination of many things. The system sometimes it's not good. The prevention, the inspection, the government, the consultants, everybody. And we have a list of 20 issues that people made a comment. Okay, but regardless what comment we want to make, it's still going up, in a little going down at the end, but it seems that we need to do more work in reducing fatalities in Canada. And then we said here, this is a chart from the International Labour Organization, and it was done in 2005, I believe, but it says there is a comparison on workplace fatalities incident. It's an incident rate per 100,000 workers. 2003 or more recent data. And if we see Canada is still in a very high level. And, it's another question that I posted to the student when we provided this presentation. And, everybody says, okay, now what happened with the immigrants? Yeah, Australia has the same similar immigration system than Canada or New Zealand, but they are still lower. What happened with Europe, United Kingdom and Netherlands, different laws. And then we compare with Portugal, Mexico, Turkey, Korea, Republic of Korea. In that case, if we think about there is a long way, we need to work more. It doesn't mean that we are going to fix every problem with these questions that we posted there when we ask to students, but the reality is that there is a long way to reduce all these accidents per 100,000 workers. Why safety or health and safety is important? And this is a sort of a question for the exam, and we said, okay, there are three considerations: the economic consideration, the legal considerations, and the moral considerations. And we are going to see one by one in the next slides. But during the course we ask people, we ask the students, so do you know any other consideration why we do health and safety? Yeah, it costs a lot of money. It's illegal in every country in the world, especially in Canada, of course, in the United States. And we have moral consideration also. We are human beings and we want to reduce accidents. We don't want everybody to have accidents. Okay? Yeah, let's continue with the economical considerations, the important health and safety. The first one is economical considerations, and the economic cost of work-related injury has two components: the direct and indirect costs of workplace injuries. Workplace injuries cost exceeds $12 billion per year, exceeding cost of labor disruptions. Injuries are not accurately reported, and statistics don't adequately capture the impact on workplace injuries. Usually we see that there are two direct costs: the WSAB, or worker compensation, or workplace safety and insurance board cost, and the MOL, or Department of Immigration in different provinces, the Ministry of Labor penalties. Basically the companies can incur in different costs, and we'll see this one by one in the next chapters, but this is only an introduction of why health and safety is important. If we think about the cost of quality, there is another iceberg of quality. There is another one that we use for safety. The small part that you see above the water level are the direct costs, and then you have a huge indirect cost that impacting the company. The first ones are, or direct costs, are insurance and other medical compensations that is covered by the worker compensation system through the monthly premiums that the company pays. But then you have some indirect costs that not too many insurance companies cover. That, for example, if you have a building damage or tools or equipment, not everything is covered by insurance. Products and material damage, for example, disruptions or interruptions in production, legal expenses, emergency supplies that you have to replace. Let's say that you have a spill of chemicals and you need to throw everything in the garbage, and then you need to pay to dispose all the chemicals that they were spilled. If you had to rent equipment, maybe it's not included into the insurance cost. But what about my time and people's time in investigating this accident? Instead of focusing in prevention, in production, in being more efficient, then we have to spend time and money in investigating these accidents. If we have maybe we have some disruptions and we have to pay lost time for the person who is out, it's going to incur in the work compensation cost, but maybe we need to train different people that needs to replace the injured person, or we need to pay overtime to additional people in order to comply with the production quota. Extra supervisory time could be as a result of overtime, or in train other new employees, because we need to hire new employees, and decrease output of injured worker upon return. This is related to when you come back. If you think about playing some sport, when you come back after an injury, it takes time to come back and be out of speed. Basically you are not as productive as before, and loss of business and goodwill. You can face it. If you have to ship something to some different provinces or states, and then it says you have until that particular day to ship the products, and if you don't ship by that day, you can face some penalties. Basically, and also they don't trust you anymore. In that case, you can lose, your clientele. There are some legal considerations. There are two main legislations. The first one is the Occupational Health and Safety Act and regulations that they are enforced by the Ministry of Labor. And the second are the Workplace Safety Insurance Act and regulations of Workplace Safety Insurance Board. Sometimes in some provinces like British Columbia, this is the same people who enforce the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Workplace Safety and Insurance Act, and in some provinces it's separated. In that case, you can face an inspection of the Ministry of Labor, or you can face an inspection of the Workplace Safety Insurance people, WSIB, or working compensations as a result of an injury. We continue with the legal considerations. Every worker has the right to a safe working conditions. This is something that it's every province, and in the United States you can find this right of every worker. In Ontario, Section 25 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act requires an employer to take every precaution reasonable in the circumstances for the protection of the worker, and this is known as a due diligence. And due diligence means that a business will foresee all unsafe conditions or acts and requires it to take precautions to prevent accidents that can reasonably be anticipated. And the question here, or the question mark that we have here and we see in the last two bullets, is take every precaution reasonable. What is reasonable? And in the third bullet it says can reasonably be anticipated. What is reasonably be anticipated? And this is reasonably be and reasonable in the circumstances change over the time, because what was reasonable 4 years ago maybe is not reasonable today. Something that we used to do 4 years ago, we can't do nowadays. If we think about seat belts in the car, 4 years ago maybe it wasn't reasonable to use it, and now it's reasonable. Okay. In that case, the law is evolving and it's changed, and now it's reasonable to use seat belts. In that case, you have to do it because we can anticipate if you don't use a seat belt in a crash, your injury is going to be higher. And due diligence requires workers to work in compliance with health and safety legislation. Due diligence. Again, due diligence is doing everything that can be reasonably expected to do in order to maintain safe and healthy work conditions. In practicality, and we have 3 questions here, how can we as a company maintain safe working conditions? And when we say we as a company, it's usually the management has to take actions, but with participation of the Union on Job Health and Safety Committee members. Okay, it's better that we when we say we, it's the main responsibility is the company, but also in consultation with the Job Health Safety Committee, because they work at the machines, they work with the dangerous hazardous materials. In that case, they know some portion of the hazards. We know something, but they know something. What should we do, and which programs the company has implemented or has been implementing? We will see this in more details in the next chapters. All the programs that we are implementing in order to reduce occupational illnesses, accidents and illnesses in the workplace, injuries and illnesses in the workplace. Due diligence means that the duty of care owed by one person groups to another. It is part of something that is called internal responsibility system. Workers have a right to a safe and healthy workplace, and every person must show due diligence. Everybody. It's not only management. It's everybody at their level. They need to show due diligence. How to apply due diligence daily? And we, first of all, obviously, we should comply with the external standard, that is the legislations, and we need to comply with the internal standards or the programs that the company has, the rules. Take every precaution reasonable for any residual risk. Remember the risk management closed loop that we have. If there is something that is residual that we haven't covered, we have not covered before, drive risk down as low as it can be reasonably go, and tomorrow we drive it down a little further. It's a continuous improvement. Slowly we are reducing all the risk in the workplace, the highest risks. Internal responsibility system, the definition, the internal responsibility system is a system within an organization where everybody has direct responsibility for health and safety as an essential part of his or her job. The goal of an internal responsibility system is to get people working together to identify and control situations that could cause harm, and to ensure everyone integrates safety and health into the daily work. There are 3 essential rights for the worker. This is another question for the exam. To know about the workplace hazards include how to identify and protect themselves from those hazards, right to participate in decisions related to workplace safety and health, free of reprisal from their participation, and the last one is the right to refuse to a dangerous work. Okay? 3 rights. This is very important. You need to memorize that. The first one is the right to know, right to participate, and right to refuse. The right to a safe workplace. Workers may be more aware of the daily hazards they face than the employer, so it makes sense for them to have the important role in hazard identification, assessment, and control. And this is what we said before. Remember hazard identification and control, this closed loop with the 4 steps? Okay, we need to remember that. It's very important because, and we need to follow this step by step. We don't want to skip one step, because as soon as we skip one step, we come up with different solutions and different conclusions. And we have some pictures there for different hazards in the workplace. We have a forklift on the left lower side of the slide, and in the middle we have some drum that can be punctured, drum with chemicals can be punctured, and then we can have a spill, and some electrical tool with a faulty wire. The Internal Responsibility System and the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The Occupational Health and Safety Act protects these rights by prohibiting employers from imposing discipline on workers for fulfill their responsibilities or exercising their rights. Basically, companies can't discipline people, employees, for exercising the 3 rights. And you remember the 3 rights. The first one is right to know, okay, right to participate, and right to refuse. Okay, these are the 3 rights. You need to memorize these rights. These help the worker participate on a more even footing with management in preventing injuries and illness. And this is very important, because if they know, let's say the first right, the right to know, if the employees, they know more about the right to know, they know about hazards, they can participate. In that case, it's more one right goes to another. Okay, if you know the hazard, you can participate in reducing the hazard. If you don't know the hazard, how are you going to participate in reducing what? Okay, and the last one is, if you want to refuse to work, you need to know how are you going to refuse to something that you don't know. Okay, safety committee in regards to the internal responsibility system. The Safety and Health Committee, it's not the internal responsibility system, but it's the system's auditor, internal auditor. The Safety Committee, basically, they make sure, members of the Safety Committee, they make sure that the internal responsibility system is working, that all the 3 rights are in line with the objective of the company. Everybody knows about hazards. We know how to participate, and we know when to refuse and how to refuse. There is a procedure on how to refuse. The Safety and Health Committee works together as a team. Okay, we are going to see this in the next chapter, but the Joint Health and Safety Committee, basically, it's mandatory in every province, except in some provinces, as long as the Ministry of Labor or the authority doesn't say so. But in every province, it's almost mandatory, and it's a good way to, investigate the hazards, assess the hazards, and identify, assess, and control the hazards to involve people from the Joint Health Safety Committee. Remember, Joint Health Safety Committee, the members are members from the worker side and from the management side. They work together, okay? They work together. For this reason, it says work together. They advise and recommend, workplace issues in the workplace and controls. They monitor the internal responsibility system to ensure it's working properly, and they shine a spotlight on weaknesses in the internal responsibility system and recommend ways to correct the root cause, such as policies, orientation, training, and workplace layout. They do inspections as well, usually monthly. It's the most common. The importance of health and safety. We continue with the third one, that is the moral consideration. Remember, there's three considerations, okay? The economical considerations, the legal, and this is the moral considerations. Employers have an obligation to ensure safe working environment for employees and their families. Research indicates that management commitment to occupational health and safety results in higher levels of employee motivations to work safely. Of course, if the company prevents accident, people are more motivated to go there and work. It's one of the motivations. It's not only the one. There are many other motivators in the workplace, but this is important. What is the proactive approach to health and safety? For example, we have many health and safety inspections, ergonomic assessment, audits, training, meetings, safety committees, job task analysis, machine guarding, and energy control. These are all the programs that we have in the companies that I work for, and it's important to have in place in order to prevent all these injuries and illnesses in the workplace. Also, we have energy control, forklift, crane safety, WMS, we will see what that means. Industrial hygiene program, PPEs, it's another concept, another acronym that you need to know, personal protective equipment, orientations, contractor management, confined space entry program, if we have, office ergonomic behavioral management. Yes, when you want to implement the program, if you need, you don't need to implement all these programs. If you don't have these issues in the world. If you don't have forklift or cranes in an office, you don't need to implement a program for crane safety or forklift safety. You need to implement the programs based on the risks that you have in the workplace. And this is very proactive, but there are other programs that they are reactive. Once they happen, you need to act, like accident investigations, like disability management, return to work from injured employees, first aid programs, we need to implement that, emergency evacuation. We can say that it's a proactive because we train in fire drills, but as soon as it happens, an emergency, it's a reactive. You have to exit the building, or use a fire extinguisher, or have an alarm system. Spill response, if you have chemicals and enough quantity of chemicals in order to respond to different spills. Everything is nice and dandy, but sometimes there are barriers to health and safety programs. And somebody can say that production is more important than safety. This coming from the production people. I don't have time for safety. In that case, this is a barrier that we need to overcome. Employers are not aware how to prevent accidents in the workplace, and this is very important. You need to put in the workplace a good safety people who understand how to prevent accidents, so the safety people can motivate management and make sure that they can train everybody, or they can manage the training program in order to understand what are the problems in the workplace and how to prevent them. You know how to identify the hazard, but sometimes you don't know how to prevent, how to implement controls, and this is another issue. Yeah, sometimes there is a conflict between management and unions, and this is not good for health and safety. They need to work together in order to prevent accidents in the workplace. And what is the role of the human resources people there in the workplace? You are going to be part of the health and safety department. You are going to be part of the human resources department. There are many people who in HR who turn in health and safety. Usually it happens in that way. HR goes to health and safety, not health and safety go to HR. In that case, it's another way to work in another field or in a similar field as an HR. And basically safety is a people issue. We as a safety professional or practitioners, we enforce procedures, practice rules, and ignoring rules, it's something that we need to take care and how to deal, and usually we deal with HR. Training, competency developing, individual skills and abilities, we are in the same boat. We participate in orientation and the HR people as well. Awareness, trainings and compensations, bonus, job design, it's important from us, from the ergonomic point of view, the production quota, work scheduling, how to do rotation, based on health and safety, based on scheduling, and measuring safety, climate and safety culture. We'll see that in our chapter 13, these type of things. But usually, with surveys, usually HR they do some surveys, and usually we include some safety questions in that survey. And safety requires legislative compliance, labor laws, and human rights, and there is similar boats. There are some laws in regards to health and safety, similar laws in labor laws and human rights. Safety decreases cost, working compensation, short-term disability, long-term disability, STD, LTD, reduce sick time, absenteeism. We go to the same day. We want to reduce absenteeism in regards to health and safety and human resources. Safety relates to other HR functions like training, performance-based pay system. We talk about training, we talk about how to implement a training program in regards to health and safety and HR, and performance-based pay system. In some locations or some companies, because they reduce accident, they receive a bonus. In that case, it has to be linked with HR. It's part of the motivation we talked about before. Less accident is more motivational, but more money as well is more motivational for the company. And this is the end of the chapter 1 of the Occupational Health Safety course, HSAF 1002, for a course that we provided at the George Brown College for 17 times. It was a very good experience. Now, for different reasons, I moved from Toronto. In that case, I wasn't able to continue. I was not able to continue providing this course. But if you have any questions, you have my email address, danielra12@yahoo.com, and you can ask me many questions. And thank you for listening to this presentation, and we'll see you in the chapter 2. Thank you. Bye.